What is not violence?
The use of force for self-defense in retaliation to those who are actively committing the violence, as done by slaves of the past in order to free themselves. You can help others achieve their own freedom, but only you can truly free yourself. If somebody refuses to be free or never embraces their freedom, they will never truly be free. However, you can voluntarily choose to help defend others' freedom against those who seek to do violence against them. This is the self defense principle. To choose not to commit violence is known as the non aggression principle.
So a lot of times, I think, like we've mentioned before, that there is always in these actions and violence and force, there is someone who is offending and someone who is defending, and the action itself always looks very similar. But the act of protecting yourself or defending your rights is simply that. Not anything that is in the defense or the protection and preserving of rights is not violence. What do you think, Corey?
Yeah, it's any action that is a right, right? Because we understood that by defining what is a wrong or something that's not a right, I don't have the right to commit violence. I don't have the right to enslave someone. I don't have the right to violate their ownership, who they are. Again, like, and I say this and I repeat it because it's remember we're correlating what is right with what is correct, not just with what is moral. So I can't claim to breathe for you. If I claim that, that's wrong. Because only you can breathe for you. So, it's not violence, okay, to say I breathe for myself. That's truth. It's violence to say I can breathe for you because, well, I can't do that. It violates truth. See, it's not just a violence against an individual's property, it's a violation on truth itself, which consists of what your property is, of who you are, and what reality you live in. So that is understanding even deeper senses. You might want to go into vices and other things. When people have to understand self defense in relationship to non aggression, I would recommend you check out our previous video on what is violence because we kind of go a little deeper into what is violence. By understanding what is violence, you can understand more as to what is not violence. Because doing not violence is kind of easy. Right now, we're just talking to each other. That's not violence. We're not violating anybody. The only person we could be violating is ourselves potentially. That is where the vices come in, where it's not a crime, but it's a vice. Like I could potentially be doing harm to my lungs because I'm talking so much, but it could harm maybe Aaron's own hearing, I guess, if I scream on top of my lungs. But, he has the ability to step away from that. He has the self defense ability to turn down the microphone, to mute me. Obviously, it's a totally different scenario, but you see the point at hand is that he has control over his property. I have control over my property. If I claim to control his property, that's slavery. If he claims to control my property, that's slavery. If we both claim to control another person's property and we come together and we write on a fancy piece of paper and say, this is a document, it's still slavery. That doesn't change just because we put it on a piece of paper. Pieces of paper do not change or alter morality. If we think it does, then we say that truth can just be made up by humans. That truth is not separate from humans, that humans do not need to abide to nature, do not need to find the truth or seek anything called knowledge, that everything's just up in the air and confused. And we talked about before what is chaos. Well, chaos is confusion. Chaos is not knowing what's happening. Chaos is just letting anything happen or not really having a sense of direction, not having any order or a form of justice or basis as to what is right and wrong. If you go into a court system, let's say it's a voluntary court system, which is great because it's by people and for people and they want to settle a dispute and talk about it with the community, who's going to be the most fair judge to have if you want to judge? Somebody who is honest, who's equal, and maybe you could say the market helps provide what judge is the most equal and honest, but that judge has to base their morals, base their judgment off of something. Otherwise, it's not a judgment. Otherwise, there is no justice. He has to base it on some level of right and wrong. And everybody in the jury or anybody who's watching, who's participating in this room, needs to also utilize their conscience and question for themselves what is right and wrong. But if we're following orders and we're just doing what we're told, are we really thinking for ourselves what is right and wrong? If we're just following what a piece of paper says, are we actually thinking about what is right and wrong? So violence has everything to do with what is right and wrong. Violence is always wrong. It's never right, even if somebody says that it can be right. Now, self defense, we say, is force, not violence. Violence is deadly force. It's the use of force for the wrong reason. I could use force to push up a boulder up the hill. I could use force to press down the pencil against the paper to make it right. But I'm using deadly force if I'm using that pencil to stab someone, or it's deadly. It's killing someone. It's hurting someone's property. It has the word dead, violation, violence. So just to reiterate these concepts, this is what it means to create freedom, is to understand who you are, to understand your ownership, to be responsible of that ownership. So to be responsible of myself is to say, well, I'm not going to do violence to someone. I'm not going to hurt them. I understand my boundaries. I understand what I should do, what I should not do. And so violence is not something I ever want to do, even if somebody tries to excuse it one way or another. I still say no. I'm never going to do it, you know? So that is standing on principle. And I'd say having the self-defense principle and the non-aggression principle allows you to have that grounded root where you say, I am doing this and I'm not doing this, you know? Non-aggression and self-defense. Self-defense is an action, non-aggression is a not an inaction, but they're both just essential as one another. Interesting, huh? How sometimes the action is not an action at all. Sometimes it's just letting things be, like the Tao Te Ching says. So only you can truly free yourself because only you own yourself and only you can have your freedoms. It is a form of property. Only you can have your rights. It's a form of property. It belongs with you. And that's why you have to defend it, because otherwise it's not yours. If somebody else proclaims to defend it for you, well, then is it their rights? Is it shared? Well, are they truly responsible for your rights? Can they truly defend who you are? Are they truly you? Can they truly breathe for you? No, they can't. So at the end of the day, you have to be responsible. You have to understand your property. Even if you're weak and you say, oh, I can't defend myself. Well, why put yourself down to such a level? You can hire somebody, have some help along your way of trying to defend yourself against violence. There's nothing wrong with that because you're not committing violence. That's all that matters, is that you're not putting out bad things into the world. But the minute you say, well, that your bodyguard should start coercing somebody else and they didn't start anything, then that's a problem. you know? So self-defense is totally fine. But you still have to realize that only you can truly defend yourself because only you are yourself. So don't degrade your status. Keep your head high because you're going to need that when you get into any sort of violent scenario. Violence is a deadly thing that you have to learn about. It's just like chaos. You have to learn from it to create order. So thank you very much for watching. Check out our next video. We'll talk about how slavery manifests, because now we already went really deep into what slavery is, or at least the act of slavery, and what it consists of when it comes to rights and ownership and property. If you haven't seen that, check it out. But we want to go now deeper into what is slavery through many other different perspectives, including how it's manifested, how it grows. And people don't realize, but slavery can grow, and can grow gradually, can grow immediately if they're not paying attention to it, if they don't know what it is.